And welcome back, fellow American patriots and Minutemen, standing at the ready to fight anew for the issues that matter on this fine but frigid Monday. Folks, there is a lot to talk about here at Sierra Podcast. Your host, Daniel Horowitz, back here today. With everything going on in Minnesota, with nothing really turbocharging deportations, but Trump yelping about them, threatening, but then doing nothing about it, he's successfully making this issue and many of our other issues more unpopular, to the point that we're going to wind up with all of the liabilities of his president, all of the liabilities of being in power, of the perception that we're in power, with none of the benefits. This is the COVID shot. This is the Pfizer shot of politics. And this is the problem when you have a modus operandi of speaking loudly about everything, but then carrying a white flag, announcing tweets and Truth Social and executive orders and press releases that you're going to do a lot of big things on issues we care about, strategies that we believe in, but then refusing to codify them in Congress, refusing to properly use the bully pulpit to advocate them, refusing to stand up to the courts or at least strip jurisdiction in Congress, expending your political capital on those core issues, economic, security, immigration, rather than the ballroom and Qatar and bizarre foreign policy and AI data centers. What winds up happening is that you dip our issues in dung, so then we can't really use them again. And then he uses his monopolistic control over the right to prevent any more effective movement from arising to actually get the job done, and then leaves us vulnerable to a Democrat takeover without any ability to fight them. And this is where we were left after the first term in 2021. And my fear is this is where we're going to be left after the second term, but with the stakes so much higher, the consequences so much graver, and we won't even have Florida as the example now, thanks to his endorsements. And I think before we get into immigration, what ties into this is that Trump just endorsed Mike Johnson for his reelection. So for all of you out there who are blaming Johnson for everything, saying that he is the reason why nothing important is being codified in must-pass bills, full of incompetence, Congress is worthless, just understand that Trump owns all of that, because Trump is why he was speaker, why he remains speaker, and why he will remain speaker. And then here's the deal. Trump endorses every other piece of garbage out of the state. So while Congress is hopeless, we can't even fight back in the red states now. And what are we left with? This is my question to you. See, when you go and announce your intention to do good stuff in executive orders, but then you don't see them through properly or at all, there's two problems with that. There's two reasons why that's negative efficacy, and it's in fact better, it's worse than if you wouldn't have done it at all. Number one, the base and the Fox News audience, so they get acculturated to political fentanyl. They think, well, the job is taken care of. Papa's taking care of us. Look at what he did, even though he never got it past the goal line. So they don't clamor to elect better people in the primaries, focus on the primaries, pressure the president, because look, we got deportations, we got border security, we got the prices down, even though we didn't. And then also, it harms us with the swing voter, the general electorate, in that they all think that this is what conservative governance is. This is what immigration enforcement is, when in fact, it's not. So in many respects, it would be better for him not to do this at all. So I want to delve into the immigration stuff. What is and isn't a valid criticism of the president? Because I'm seeing a lot of reactionary people and people that are reactionaries to the reactionaries, and all taking positions either because they defend the president at all costs or they hate him at all costs, and in the process willing to take positions on immigration that they wouldn't have taken 3 minutes ago, uh, if the president wouldn't be around. So, number one is inconsistent messaging. You can't have a president that goes out there and says, look, we don't want to remove people, but criminal aliens. Well, then inevitably, ICE, even though they're not getting rid of enough, they are arresting some that aren't criminal aliens. So then you look like a fool. Oh, well, look, you don't have control over ICE. Whereas Trump needs to give the sovereignty and economic message as well. He also, as we mentioned last week, the president needs to focus on employment enforcement. And we've noted that if he would actually cut off all the magnets, I, put this out on Monday's show last week, it would preclude the need to even do a lot of physical removals. There's a lot of incompetence, photo ops. Kristi Noem is all about photo ops. It's just not a good image. And then, the reality is that if you go an entire 12 months and allow rioting and attacks on federal immigration and marshals and federal officers to continue persistently for 12 months, you lose your deterrent. They have not gone after the John Brown gun clubs, the National Socialist Rifle Association. They haven't prosecuted any people for directly attacking and impeding ICE members, or very few of them. They have not used any of the January 6th statutes that were used against Trump supporters. They've done none of this. So you're left with zero deterrent. So yeah, 12 months later, now it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. But this is what it means to speak loudly and carry a white flag and basically do nothing. The other important lesson you're seeing from the immigration stuff is how Democrats are basically doing the national divorce that I wanted when Biden was president in red states. They're actually doing this on a grand scale. I mean, you're watching how even local the people, the local law enforcement are all together in Minneapolis in support of the illegal aliens. So how much more so the next time we have a Democrat president, which will likely be next time, when they come to prosecute people like you and me for speaking up, speaking our mind, how much more so for American citizens, you would imagine we would have red states, the people, the local, the state officials all in unison saying, we will interpose against the federal government. Yet we don't have that because we have a bunch of lemmings that Trump has endorsed for governor in all these red states. So that's not going to happen. Meanwhile, Trump calls for defunding sanctuary cities. But then he literally says that while he is pressuring conservatives to vote for appropriation bills that, frankly, most Democrats now support to fund sanctuary cities. Conservatives are trying to defund them. The Freedom Caucus wants to put in that rider, and the admin's pressuring them not to fight it. So again, this is another example of speak loudly, but carry a white stick. I'm sorry. A white flag, a white stick. It's kind of pathetic. Tweets about, yeah, we ought to be doing this. It's almost like Trump is a Fox News commentator, not the president. Yeah, this ought to be done. Well, the last time I checked, you have a 90% approval among the GOP base. It's very hard for a senator or congressman in a red state to defy you. You could totally primary them out if you actually, did something useful. You could totally demand a set of budget reconciliation bills that codify all these priorities into law, defunding sanctuary cities, defunding judicial cases on illegal alien removals, defunding lawsuits against state enforcement, empowering state enforcement. You could put this all in, but you don't. And by the way, just a brief update on the budget bills before we go on. So Democrats are now threatening a government shutdown that they're not going to support the DHS funding bill, but it doesn't negate anything I said last week. And in fact, it affirms it. The only reason is because of the death of this anti-ICE protester. So they feel like they have to show the base something, but they're not offended by anything in the text of the bill. They're just saying, oh, you have to defund ICE completely, which obviously the bill doesn't do. But as we noted last week, it doubles H-2B visas, or H-1B, H-2B visas. It continues the UAC racket, and it doesn't codify any of the priorities we mentioned, like defunding sanctuary cities. I want you guys to listen to Speaker Johnson. And again, anytime it's Speaker Johnson, I want you to understand he is a steward of the Trump agenda. So if you're upset with him, take it up with the boss. That's the reality. Here is what Speaker Johnson had to say as he was bragging about his accomplishments. Take a listen.
And I think everyone in this room understands what has just been done here. This isn't just a news conference. I would call it a celebration of sorts. Despite the noise, despite our slim margins, despite the fact that most members in the House have never gone through a regular member-driven appropriations process before, this team got it done. They stood together and they did the hard work and they got it done. The House has now passed all 12 appropriations bills, and the Senate will soon do the same, and the President is going to sign them into law. What a concept, gentlemen.
Okay, folks, that was hilarious. So, Democrats are fighting civilization, wars, insurrection, neo-Confederacy. You can't have sovereignty. You can't enforce immigration law. We're going to go and riot and attack and target ICE. And then now we're going to fight to defund it. And Republicans are like, oh my gosh, we passed all the appropriation bills. They want to talk about process while Democrats fight for civilization. So they're happy they passed the appropriation bills one by one individually. Yeah, but what's in them? Things that continue to fund both the current inflationary spending, but also the same policies, and do not codify any of the fake Trump executive orders that he intended to do, but didn't really intend to do, because the proof is in the pudding that all but the most progressive Democrats voted for it. And by the way, even now, with all of Schumer's bloviating about, oh, he's going to fight, it's only the DHS bill, just because, not even because of anything in it, just because of the whole death of this protester in Minneapolis. He's got to show that he's fighting for his cop attacking base. But the other bills, and they're even floating the idea of supporting the other 5 appropriation bills that the House just passed. There's nothing in that that's offensive to them. Labor, HHS, education, HUD, all that stuff, Democrats totally feel that they're able to support. So it's a complete joke, but Johnson's like, yeah, we passed all the appropriation bills. I mean, it's just mentally ill when you think about what makes these people tick. It's literally the idiot that focuses on the finger when the guy points to the moon, that they're worried about the process rather than the outcomes. It truly is amazing to get into the minds of an establishment Republican and how they think and what excites them. But again, I don't want you guys to take this all out on Johnson. This is the president himself. Now, the other thing in the news is that one by one, all these Republicans are now attacking the president, saying we need an investigation into the people that were killed by ICE and all this stuff. And Trump supporters are complaining. But again, who backed all these people, all these senators? One of them is Pete Ricketts. And a lot of people thought, hey, Daniel, what's wrong with Pete Ricketts? I don't know. What's wrong with him? He's from the famous Ricketts family, wealthy family. He's a complete doorknob wasting a red state. Trump supported him as governor. He's a horrible governor. And now a senator. He's a horrible senator. Everywhere you point, Trump is behind it. If you don't like Speaker Johnson, it's because Trump put him there and keeps him there. If you don't like these rhino senators complaining about ICE, Trump endorsed all of them. If you don't like the budget bills that are funding all this stuff, well, Trump is not only supporting it, but pressuring Freedom Caucus members not to put riders on the bills to codify his own executive orders. So at some point, perhaps it's Trump himself that is not on board with the Trump agenda. I'm sorry. And at some point, it's just a joke, but it's actually worse that he's signaling these executive orders and not following through with them, because it just makes everything look incompetent, incomplete, and becomes unpopular, so that now we can't, grow a movement and create a movement to actually implement this stuff in a sincere, competent way. But also, even if we did, it would be more unpopular now, thanks to what you did. It's like we give him a steak, he chews on it and spits it out and hands it to us and says, hey, now go work with it. Well, we don't have anything to work with. So one after another, you have all these rhinos. Here's a guy that Trump himself supported, big ally, James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Here's what he had to say about the situation with ICE in Minneapolis.
Trump, I would almost think about, okay, if the mayor and the governor are going to put our ICE officials in harm's way, and there's a chance of losing more, innocent lives or whatever, then maybe go to another city and let the people of Minneapolis decide, do we want to continue to have all of these illegals? Are we going to allow our governor, attorney general, and mayor to get away with this? And I think the people of Minnesota would rebel against their leadership, because it's very clear that a majority of Americans want the criminal illegals apprehended.
All right, folks, I can't even handle that. Every word is wrong. So he's like, we need to wave the white flag. Just move out of Minneapolis. Well, first of all, it wouldn't be Minneapolis. If you do that, it's going to be every blue area, including a lot of blue areas in red states where the governors are Trump-endorsed retards and have no control over. That's first of all. Second of all, notice he says criminal illegal aliens. Okay, so again, it's we're back to that messaging. Third of all, notice how he believes somehow the people would rebel and throw them out. It's just, the whole thing is stupid. And again, it would be one thing if we fortified red states where we have no illegal immigration in red states, where we've codified into law and policy jurisdiction stripping and state immigration enforcement, state deportation, but we're not. Because A, Trump's not pushing it, people like Comer aren't pushing it in must-pass bills, and frankly, we only have one governor who is even trying to do it and wants to do it. Here's another governor, Kevin Stitt, and I've been talking about the Oklahoma governor for years, how he is the most pro-illegal, pro-jailbreak person around. He supported driver's licenses for illegals. Here's what he had to say about the situation.
Agreement, President Trump closed the border, promised to get violent criminals out of our country, and I think everybody agrees with that. But now Americans are asking themselves, what is the end game? What is the solution? And, we believe in federalism and state rights, and nobody likes feds coming into their state. And so what's the goal right now? Is it to deport every single non-U.S. citizen? I don't think that's what Americans want. We have to stop politicizing this. We need real solutions on immigration reform.
Real solutions on immigration reform, you know what that means. That means amnesty. Federalism? This is so bizarre. When it comes to legal immigration, it's the lowest common denominator of federal and state sovereignty. When you trespass, you traverse federal and state sovereignty. So both should have the right to remove, not both should have the right not to remove that. But again, it's not like Kevin Stitt wants to do this in Oklahoma. It's a cop-out. Oh, federalism. They don't want federal agents coming in. We're talking about people that don't belong here. Now, I don't want to hear this straw man that of all these operations, you can find a few cases where citizens were roped in. If that's a mistake, then they have the right to sue the pants off of DHS and redress their grievances and recover damages for that. But that's like anything else. You can't say you're going to have an invasion every time a Democrat's in there, 20 million people. Oh, you can't do anything because there are citizens. There's a bright red line between citizens and non-citizens. And I think I will say the president has been very incompetent about explaining to people the law, as I have done for 120 years worth of case law that the courts are now violating, that deportation is not a punishment because you're not being locked up indefinitely as a punishment. You're being repatriated to your homeland where you can go and live out a beautiful life as much as you want. You just don't have an affirmative right to remain here against the national will, the will of the political branches. And I will, so a couple things. Number one, this is another example of the GOP that we have today is fundamentally no different than the GOP we had when Trump took office or rose to prominence in 2015, 2016. And the reason is because for 5 consecutive political cycles, election cycles, Trump has nominated pretty much all of these people single-handedly. So look, of course, nothing has changed because it's Trump's fault. Everywhere you turn, he is the problem because he speaks loudly. He'll talk about everything, but will never implement and then ultimately just surrender on it. And we're left with the lowest common denominator of the political liabilities and none of the policy benefits. It's just ridiculous. And I do want to say another point. I am finding some friends of mine that, they're the opposite of the Trump retards where everything is Trump's fault, or because Trump does something improperly, they'll start taking the opposite position on that issue that they wouldn't otherwise do. So a lot of them are now, ICE is being like stormtroopers, ICE is this, ICE is that. Look, you know me, I am not a down the line, back to blue person. I said that throughout the Biden administration. And inevitably, individual officers could do things wrong. But the bottom line is you're forgetting that before any of this happened, for months, ICE was targeted for assassination. They've been physically assaulted nonstop. And if you want to blame Trump for letting that go on and not clamping down harder, then fine. But you can't at the same time say he's being too tough or the ICE agents. I'm not saying no ICE agent in any operation ever made any mistake, but that's a straw man. What the hell do you want from them? Don't take out your, disquiet on Trump and your the fact that you're so upset at him on the individual ICE agents, that at the end of the day, you're forgetting what they're up against. So there might be deaths and injuries that shouldn't have happened and are unnecessary, but that is the fault of the organized Antifa military style multi-pronged attacks where they'll have civilians involved. You cannot walk a day in what they're up against. This has been going on for months. Targeted assassinations. Remember, they actually wound up killing their own in the Dallas ICE facility, but they were going to take out a team of ICE there. So don't forget about that just because you're pissed off at Trump. Oh yeah, we shouldn't be doing this. We should only be deporting criminal aliens. I mean, that's utter nonsense, and you got to get that out of your brain. I don't want to be reactionary the other way either. I'm not going to start changing my views because it's perceived as unpopular. And by the way, the polling is gaslighting. This abolish ICE thing, it's a online left thing, just like you have online right things. I do think in general he's just making the issue more unpopular, but I mean, for the most part, it's really a matter of the economy and just his priorities, and it's just his demeanor. No one believes that he is serious about this, that it's a selfless view of protecting American workers, American sovereignty, American security. It's all an act. And that has a lot to do with the way he's acting economically and just on other issues. Remember, if you're unpopular on so many other issues, that will taint an issue that would otherwise be popular. But I just want to point out here that if you're bothered by Speaker Johnson, you're bothered by Kevin Stitton and these other guys that are rickets attacking Trump on ICE, the reason he doesn't have the votes is because of his endorsements and his lack of priorities, lack of consistent use of the bully pulpit and driving it to primaries, budget bills, must pass bills. You know, Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota said it's pointless to hold a vote to require proof of citizenship to register to vote. That's another executive order that's enjoined in the courts, going nowhere. He said, because there just aren't enough votes, a waste of time. Well, with that attitude, yeah, we'll never get anywhere. But you know why? Because Kevin Cramer is another liberal Republican wasting a red seat that Trump endorsed. We were looking at challenging him. Trump endorsed him. So meanwhile, we're left with all of the liabilities, but none of the benefits of his tenure. So now most polls show Democrats are up 6 in the generic ballot, which would be a disaster. But that would be, let's say, roughly on par with a 2018 loss. What's worse than that, and what's catastrophic, is that most of the polls are now showing Democrats crushing it with independents. New York Times has Dems up 15 among indies. Emerson, which is the one that Republicans have celebrated, that predicted both of Trump's wins and, you know, got the last couple presidential elections pretty accurately. Emerson has Dems up 22 among independents. But again, what is the focus? What is the priority of this administration? I'll tell you what it is. 13 of the largest 20 lobbying firms saw revenue growth by 10% compared to 2024. They brought in nearly $824 million, up from $595 million the last year of Biden. Okay, so that's what it is. It's all a pay for play. The priorities are all bizarre. We've spent on Greenland. We've spent on bullying countries that we don't need to be involved with. The Gaza peace board, Jelani in Syria, all things Qatar, the ballroom, tariffs. And that's what he blew his wad on. This weird budget bill that they passed last year with tax provisions that no one could even understand what's in it, much less message it. The stuff on codifying election integrity, codifying immigration enforcement, interior magnets, although Trump doesn't want to cut off the magnets because he wants the non-criminal aliens here. So none of that was codified. The judicial supremacism. Oh, and then everything is data centers. By the way, isn't it interesting? All of Texas is below freezing, meaning even the southern part. The northern part is like 0 degrees. The average temperature has been well below 20 in the entire country. 50 million people are facing sub-zero temperatures. And then imagine that if we don't stop this trajectory, a massive percentage of our power is going to data centers. Would you rather be kept warm in the winter, or would you rather power more chatbot slop, this generative AGI that doesn't do anything for us? Well, I think we know where the voters are. But, you know, Trump spent his entire political capital the last couple months trying to fight red states who want to make sure that citizens don't pay the freight for these big tech chatbot slop. It's just ridiculous. What a way to expend capital. And then, folks, like, I'm sorry, but at some point, the judicial supremacism matters. We saw this in the first term. If you're going to put out orders and then have them mow down in the courts, not codify them in Congress, not do jurisdiction stripping, not articulate a vision why you're not going to listen and why the courts are engaging in insurrection, and then you go and listen, you look like a thief in the night. See, if I put out an order and every second you hear a headline, struck down by the courts, struck down by the courts, and then you abide by it, you look like you have a guilty conscience and you're wrong. But if you come to Congress and you say, look, we're going to strip jurisdiction, they have no right to do this, here's 130 years of case law, why they're wrong, then it would be more popular. But, I mean, we have a million of these cases. I'll just go through a few. Federal Judge Indira Talwani, yeah, this is what we have as judges now, issued a ruling blocking the Trump administration to end this family reunification parole for Colombians, Cubans, Ecuadorians, Guatemalans, Haitians, Hondurans, and Salvadorans. Basically, it allows them to traffic their children in here and then say, oh, well, we can't be separated, so we got to be together and get amnesty together. Another Obama-appointed judge released Harvey Loreno Rosales, an MS-13 gang member convicted of murder with a final order of removal to avoid ICE deportation, at least for now. So, I mean, heck, even the worst criminal aliens are getting reprieve from the federal judges because we refuse to codify any of this in Congress, refuse to say no to the courts, or at least codify jurisdiction stripping. So, you know, we're going to continue this fake game of having all the political liabilities of looking like you're legally in the wrong, not achieving anything. A Massachusetts federal court ruled on Friday that the Trump administration violated First Amendment rights of pro-Palestinian professors and students at universities. Judge William Young imposed a higher evidentiary bar for removing members of academic associations, allowing them to challenge any change in their immigration status, literally undermining years of case law. Remember very clearly about First Amendment in the context of immigration. Do foreign nationals have First Amendment rights not to get punished for their speech? Absolutely, yes, they do. But do they have First Amendment rights to use against deportation? No, because deportation is a consequence of sovereignty, not a punishment, as long as we're not indefinitely detaining you as a punishment. It's that simple. But of course, we're not codifying any of this. So here we go. Here we continue. I just want to remind you of what the Trump administration is allowing to continue going on. Oh, well, Daniel, it's not his fault. So if you're not willing to either say no to the courts or codify these orders in Congress, then don't do them at all, because all you're going to do is make them more unpopular for the future. You get all the liabilities politically, but none of the policy benefits. So I'm sorry, but this negative efficacy needs to end. It's just ridiculous. The whole thing is dumb. But anyway, what do we have here? 8 U.S.C. 1182 A3B7 bars entry to anyone who endorses or espouses terrorist activity or persuades others to endorse or espouse. It's that simple. And, you know, basically, any immigrant who is or was a member of an affiliated communist organization, totalitarian, is inadmissible. In other words, you don't have the right to espouse anything and remain in the country. Fong Yu Ting v. U.S. 1893, the power to exclude aliens and the power to expel them rest upon one foundation, derived from one source, are supported by the same reasons, and are in truth but parts of one of the same power. This is the Supreme Court. The power of Congress, therefore, to expel, like the power to exclude, so to kick out, may be exercised entirely through executive officers, or Congress may call in the aid of the judiciary to ascertain. Meaning, if you want to call on the judiciary, you can, but they have no right to get involved if they vest that power in executive officers. Again, this is case law that's been around for a long time. Just reading through my notes here. 2 years later, 1895, Lemmoon Singh v. U.S., it is not within the province of the judiciary to order that foreigners who have never been naturalized, nor acquired any domicile or residence within the U.S., nor even admitted to the country pursuant to law, to enter in opposition to the constitutional and lawful measures of the legislative and executive branches of the national government. As to such persons, the decisions of executive or administrative officers acting within powers expressly conferred by Congress are due process of law. There is no judicial review. Shaughnessy v. U.S., 1953. Due process does not invest any alien with a right to enter, nor confer upon those admitted the right to remain against the national will. Knopf v. Shaughnessy, 1950. The decision to admit or to exclude an alien may be lawfully placed with the president, who may in turn delegate the carrying out of that function to responsible executive officers. The action of the executive officer under such authority is final and conclusive. Whatever the rule may be concerning deportation of persons who have gained entry to the United States, it is not within the province of any court, unless expressly authorized by law, to review the determination of the political branch to exclude a given alien. Fialo v. Bell, 1977. The court has repeatedly emphasized that over no conceivable subject is the legislative power of Congress more complete than it is over the admission of aliens. And the reason is because deportation is not a punishment. Fong Yu Ting, again, 1893, the order of deportation is not a punishment for a crime. It is not a banishment in the sense in which the word is often applied to the expulsion of a citizen from his country as a way of punishment. It is but a method of enforcing the return to his own country of an alien who has not complied with conditions upon the performance of which the government of the nation, acting within its constitutional authority and through the proper departments, has determined that his continuing to reside here shall depend. He has therefore not been deprived of his life, liberty, and property without due process of law, and the provisions of the Constitution securing the right of jury trial and prohibiting unreasonable search and seizure. Turner v. Williams, 1904. And it says that obviously the executive branch cannot unilaterally declare unlawful residence within the country to be a crime punishable by deprivation of liberty and property without the fact of guilt should first be established by a judicial trial. Meaning, if you want to, execute the guy, put him in prison, but detention or temporary confinement is part of the means necessary to give effect to the exclusion or expulsion was held valid. No limits can be put by the courts upon the power of Congress to protect by summary methods the country from the advent of aliens. Back then, I mean, this is not politically correct, but whose race or habits render them undesirable as citizens, or to expel such if they have already found their way into our land. Okay, so again, the point is, here it says even for racial reasons, forget about espousing pro-terrorist stuff. If we don't like the way you look, there is no right to immigrate. You could debate that politically in the political branches. But this is the lack of megaphone that the president has failed to do, his entire time. So, yeah, you're left with lethargic messaging. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, due process, due process. ICE might come for me next. But that's stupid because no. There's a difference between punishing someone and removing a non-citizen. And again, like anything else, if you have a mistaken identity, someone's really a citizen. So if you do something wrong, then obviously, it's within the power of a citizen to sue and, gain some sort of right. But if you are a non-citizen, you do not have the right to militate against your removal other than a process that Congress grants in statute. So here we are, negative efficacy, all the liabilities, and none of the political and policy benefits at all of the immigration issue. So I want to move on to economics. I mean, if you think the president's polling is bad on immigration, well, you can only imagine where things are economically. Let's start with housing. So obviously, just first off, we did a show with Peter Schiff on Friday, and we were just going crazy about gold surging to 5,000 and silver 100. And then before you blink an eye on the next trading day, Monday, now what? Silver is like 113. It just like blows right through it. And gold is, surge past and copper, all this stuff. So again, I mean, we're headed to an economic hell. Stagflation is horrible. So, but the one thing is, housing is unaffordable. And I want to give you data that shows once and for all why I am right, that it is not a supply problem, that somehow we need to build more and subsidize more and fuel more of a bubble. There's actually more supply. There's record amount of sellers versus buyers. It's just an inflation government and rate trap. And the way to solve it is not trying to bring down the rates, because, by the way, mortgage rates went up 30 basis points since Trump tried to buy the MBSs through Freddie Mac, which was supposed to bring it down. All those gambits are going to backfire. But it's to bring down prices. So anyway, Redfin, well, first, the National Association of Realtors is out with a report. December saw the worst home sales on record, 22% lower than even the housing bust of 2010. So there's lower demand. Moreover, according to Redfin, there were a record 47% more home sellers than buyers in December, the largest gap on record. The percentage itself jumped 7.1% from the previous month in November, and the number of active home buyers fell by 5.9% month over month, the lowest level on record. So it's not a lack of supply. It's buyers are dropping out because there's a stalemate that the buyers don't want to pay the price that the sellers are offering. Now, what it's showing is it's starting to crack and prices are starting to come down. I would argue if government would stop fueling it with all of its monetary, fiscal, and HUD policy, prices would have already come down. So clearly, this is a price inflation demand problem, not a supply problem. And clearly, the answer is not lower mortgage rates, but lower prices. Now, you might think, well, Daniel, of course, everyone wants prices to come down. Government would never do things to keep prices afloat. I mean, isn't everyone saying they want to bring prices down? No. Deep down, the president doesn't want to change things. And he admits it himself, which is why a lot of what his HUD, which, by the way, he increases funding for $8 billion in his budget bill. This is why the president is keeping the prices afloat. Take a listen to what he said at Davos.
About housing, because nobody ever says this. I am very protective of people that already own a house, of which we have millions and millions and millions. And because we have had such a good run, the house values have gone up tremendously. And these people have become wealthy. They weren't wealthy. They become wealthy because of their house. And every time you make it more and more and more affordable for somebody to buy a house cheaply, you're actually hurting the value of those houses, obviously, because the one thing works in tandem with the other. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the value of people that own a house, who for the first time in their lives are walking around the streets of whatever city they're in, very proud that their house is worth $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Now, if I want to really crush the housing market, I could do that so fast and people could buy houses, but you would destroy a lot of people that already have houses.
So there you have it, folks. Trump admits that he could pull the plug on the monetary manipulation, the juicing, the MBSs. He knows that he could actually stop fueling the bubble, which is what we all said we wanted to do. But then the houses wouldn't be worth $700,000. Well, they're not. And that's the problem. They need to come down. Yeah, I mean, no one wants it to crash to zero, but it's not. I mean, but some of those $700,000 houses are really like $450,000. And some of these $500,000 houses are really closer to $300,000. And that's the reality. And you never had that money. It's like Trump wants it all. He wants prices high and low at the same time. He wants insurance companies to cover the Obamacare mandates, but then premiums to come down. Well, life doesn't work that way. I mean, you got to go with what is fair to the most people and what is fair to a free market and the role of government. And that is to keep things at the equilibrium rather than sustaining government interventions that unnaturally change that equilibrium. That is just the reality. I'm sorry if that offends people. But you heard blatantly the president actually wants to keep this going. He wants to keep the racket going. And by the way, a similar thing that ties into this, which I'm actually happy the president's doing the right thing for the wrong reason. So he initially announced that they want to allow people to tap into their 401ks to purchase homes, which, by the way, you could already do. So I'm not sure what they were going to do, but some furthering of that policy. Now, again, the objective is you want to make sure you reverse the policies that are inflating prices of houses, not subsidizing people to purchase more easily, but not really, the current unsustainable levels. That's the last thing you want to be doing at this point. So you don't want to say, all right, let's go and fuel the bubble even further. But that's what his administration put out. But now the president is saying, well, you know what? I don't want the 401ks. He said, where is this? He said, they're talking about taking money. I'm not a huge fan of it, so he's opposing it. One of the reasons is I don't like that is their 401ks. They're doing so well. They're up 80, 90% in some cases. And, they're talking about a lot of people. I like keeping their 401ks in great shape. So notice, housing bubble, stock market bubble, the 401ks. That's all fake money. If you want to re-privatize and rebalance the economy away from the cage-shaped economy, it's not that we're inherently opposed to housing going up or the stock market going up, but it's just not natural to do this well. And necessarily, in order for inflation to come down and have a fairer, more natural economy, not a fake economy, yes, 401ks and housing will not be as high as they are now. That's just a reality. We all know that. But now you know that the president does not want to bring it down. Now, in this case, I agree, because it would take one bad policy and fuel it for another bad policy. So I agree with him that we shouldn't be tapping 401ks to purchase housing, just not for the same reason. By the way, one more thing I got to mention to move on to foreign policy. Now that we're talking about things that are, pushing the right policy for the wrong reason, the president is threatening, and I hope he follows through with this because, as we mentioned today, speak loudly, carry a white flag. He's talking about withdrawing all U.S. troops from Syria. Now, what they're trying to say is, because they're there to help the SDF, the Kurds, and now the Kurds aren't part of our agenda anymore. Now, Jelani is taking over the country, so he doesn't need us anymore. Well, it's the right policy for the wrong reason. It's the right policy because, there's no good to having our troops there in a precarious logistical situation, refereeing multi-way civil wars and getting killed for it. But it's the wrong reason because he's like, basically, let's allow Jelani to liquidate the Kurds. Not that our soldiers being there is going to help that anyway. So my point is, if it's a matter of handing the country to Jelani without our soldiers in the hornet's nest versus handing the country over to Jelani with our soldiers in the hornet's nest, well, I'd rather our troops just be out of there and be done with it. But either way, we should not be subsidizing and supporting a terrorist like Jelani. But then again, Qatar Akbar. So, anything to service Qatar and Turkey's Erdogan, by the way, certainly this administration, sadly, is going to pursue. And look, you're now seeing an open fight with Israel where they're demanding that Turkey and Qatar be involved, and Hamas doesn't really need to be demilitarized. And basically, you have Witkoff and Kushner because of their business deals with Qatar. And again, none of this is about ideology. It's all about business deals. So they're there promoting Qatar's interest, which again is why the president does not want Israel to be self-sufficient. He's opposing Netanyahu's own effort to say, look, let's wean off foreign military aid. And Trump opposes it. You know why? Because he wants to continue controlling them at the BS of Qatar as part of the pay for play. And this is just so stupid. So I ask you all, it's not that Trump hasn't embarked on some good things. But when you look carefully, I warned you a year ago, and now you can see it. Doge, Doge, Doge. Yeah, everything Doge said they'd cut got an increase in spending in the budget bill. And again, I don't want to hear, oh, it's Mike Johnson. A, he endorsed Mike Johnson. B, every time the Freedom Caucus guys try to codify some of Trump's executive orders, the administration officials actually threaten and cajole them into not doing it. So if you want to blame someone for the executive orders falling flat, I think you'll need to look in the mirror and take it up with the boss himself, because it's not the speaker, it's not the majority leader, it's not the rank and file members, it's the president himself. And to the extent you have bad members of Congress, well, take it up with Trump's endorsements. After 10 years and 5 consecutive electoral cycles of full godlike control over the party that he could have used to get rid of all these guys, but instead chose to continuously reelect these guys. So it is what it is. Don't shoot the messenger. But anyway, that's it for today. We're going to have some good guests on coming this week. So looking forward to that. Make sure you subscribe and like our YouTube page at Horowitz Show on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe as well to our Substack, Daniel Horowitz at Liberating Truths. If you do have your phone out and you're watching, you could put it up to the left corner here, the QR code, and you'll subscribe there to our Substack. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. We are thankfully growing our channel. I'm going to try to do more video. I do apologize. I didn't put out a Substack today. I'm going to try to get it out tomorrow. We're trying to do twice a week, a roundup of stories that I haven't gotten to. By the way, I'm focusing very much on all the AI data center stuff that we don't necessarily have time to get to. There's tons of stories every day, especially now with power problems. I mean, imagine how bad it is so far because of data centers, but imagine if all these data centers actually get built, what it would look like. Now is a good time to take it up with your local officials. No new hyperscale data centers for now. And look, this is another example of negative efficacy. Trump is going to lose on this issue at his own peril. And look, I got to just say this one final thing. To paraphrase George Patton, could we die on our own hills? Could we die for our own country and not die for the other SOB's country, or in this case, ideology? If we're going to lose an election, could we actually lose it on implementing our own agenda and not this flaccid Qatar Akbar, bizarre foreign policy, distraction with tariffs in Greenland, or AI data centers? Could it actually be fulfilling the mandate on inflation and invasion? Or is that just too much to ask? I don't know. We just can't have nice things. But again, anyway, till tomorrow, God bless you all. Micah 6-8, and thank you for listening.